in previous years. And Jocelyn will be doing that in Lac-Saint-Jean. I also want to say hello to the Honourable Jonquière Blackburn, a former minister and former member of Parliament for Jonquière. Thank you very much for being here. On October 21st, you will have to choose between the Liberals under Justin Trudeau, a government that has betrayed the middle class, and a Conservative government that will put more money back in your pockets so that you can get ahead.
Next month, Canadians will have a choice between the Trudeau Liberals, a government that said it would help the middle class, but instead raised taxes and made life more expensive for every Canadian, and a new Conservative government that will put more money in your pocket so you can get ahead.
As Prime Minister, I will lower taxes for everyone. I'm talking about $850 more in the pockets of every family. Get rid of HST on hydro bills. Lower taxes on maternity leave. Introduce a tax credit on physical education for kids, allowing parents to claim up to $1,000 for sporting activities. I will create a tax credit on arts activities for children, allowing parents to claim up to $500 for art and educational programs. And I will increase the age credit, which will benefit especially lower-income seniors and give them up to $300. There are also important issues to be considered in this election campaign, including the protection of our environment. Here in the Saguenay, you have a great opportunity to live in one of the most wonderful regions in the country. Like other Quebecers, you want to protect your area of the country. And this is a desire that I share and that I will realize as Prime Minister on October 21st. Justin Trudeau, on the other hand, with respect to the environment, is well known for his improvisation. He can't meet the 2030 targets, but he says all kinds of things about what he can do in 2050 with zero details. Justin Trudeau is a real master of improvisation. He wrote his environmental plan on the corner of a napkin. I, however, have a real plan. My plan is a real plan to protect our environment, and it relies on three major principles: green technology, no taxes, a more green environment and a cleaner one, and a global fight against climate change. This plan is the most comprehensive plan ever produced by a political party. It includes 55 specific measures which are realistic and achievable, and that is what I am announcing today. Under my plan, you will therefore be able to receive a green homes tax credit, which is refundable to the level of 20% for green renovations. That could signify up to $3,800 annually in savings on your green renovations in the coming years. Those green renovations will include installing high-quality insulation, doing things to make the home more energy efficient, and replacing certain models to that end, and putting in new ventilation and heating systems that are more efficient, as well as the installation of solar panels. All of the measures in our environmental plan will allow you to save more in order to improve your living conditions.
Establish the Green Homes Tax Credit that will allow you to lower your home's emissions through green renovations. This two-year program will encourage Canadians to renovate their homes with emission-reducing technologies. With our plan, you'll be eligible to receive a 20% refundable credit on your income tax for green improvements to your homes of over $1,000 and up to $20,000. It could mean savings of up to $3,800 on your green renovations each and every year. Now, those green renovations would include installation of high-quality insulation, investments in high-efficiency furnaces, replacement of doors and windows with more efficient models, upgrading of ventilation, heating, and cooling systems, and installation of solar panels. Together, the measures in our environmental plan will allow you to save while protecting our environment. Our realistic strategy will also give Canada the best chance to meet our Paris targets. Je suis père de 5 enfants.
I am the father of 5 children, and like all fathers, we want to offer them the best possibility of success and a chance to live in a healthy and clean environment. Together, we will make an important step forward towards that with a realistic plan to protect our environment, including green homes. My plan will reduce global emissions by putting more money in the pockets of Canadians so that they can improve their daily lives and get ahead. That's my plan for the country.
Bonjour, Mélissa Savoie-Soulière, je suis de Radio-Canada.
Radio-Canada.
Ma question, c'est surtout sur Richard Martel, en fait, qui est votre candidat dans CBC
Richard Martel, who's one of your candidates.
Qui mène la campagne un peu dans la région, en faisant,
running the campaign in the region,
de Philippe Gagnon dans Jonquière, les messages téléphoniques. Il dit, entre autres, sur la boîte vocale ou sur sa page Facebook,
and on his Facebook page, he says that he is a nationalist and supports the secularism bill brought in by the Quebec government. How do you respond to that? My position on that issue is still quite clear. This is a policy that I will never follow at the federal level. But again, this is a case for the courts to decide, and they will decide it. But do you approve of what your candidate is doing? Well, as I say, that is a policy I will never introduce at the federal level. I have always been clear in giving my position on this. Now it's before the courts, and the courts will decide the issue.
Good morning, Christy Kirkup from the Globe and Mail. What is your path to reach the Paris Climate Agreement?
Our real plan for the environment. That is our path. It does several things. It makes it more affordable for Canadians to invest in their own homes with this Green Homes Tax Credit. It also takes the climate change fight global. And it is the only plan that talks about exporting Canadian clean technology to help lower global emissions.
With all due respect, you have not carved out a specific plan of how you're going to reach the targets laid out in the Paris Agreement. How are you going to be able to reach those targets, especially with the continuation of oil production?
Mm-hmm. Well, as I said, this plan does give Canada the best chance to achieve those Paris targets. With investing in green technology, not taxes, with our green patent tax credit, with this green homes renovation, the green homes tax credit. These are all measures specifically designed to help lower Canada's emissions, but also lower global emissions. And that's a key point here. Canada is not the problem. We can shut down our entire economy here, and within a matter of days, the production in China would replace everything that we produce here, all the emissions that we emit here. So it's much better for our planet, much better to fight climate change, to take the climate change fight global, to help fight, to lower global emissions, and that's exactly what our plan does. C'est primordial qu'on réduise les émissions dans un contexte global. Et notre plan, c'est le seul plan
that talks about reducing global emissions. By exporting Canadian technology, we can reduce global emissions much better than if we only focus on our emissions here in Canada.
Here in Quebec, a lot of your own views differ with Quebecers, notably on same-sex marriage, the environment, Energy East pipeline, and Bill 21. Isn't that a major hurdle for the Conservatives to actually win votes here in Quebec?
Not at all, because Quebecers know and Canadians know that we will not reopen those types of issues, those social issues. That's been a very clear commitment. And I know that here in Quebec, Quebecers would prefer to purchase Canadian energy instead of oil and gas coming from the United States or Algeria.
But they don't want Energy East. I mean, how do you fight that, in addition to the resurgence of the Bloc Québécois in these regions that you're visiting?
Quebecers support energy projects. Quebecers support the growth of clean technology like natural gas. I know that Quebecers, every survey shows that Quebecers would rather purchase their oil and gas from Canada instead of from Donald Trump's economy or instead of from Algeria. So I'm quite confident with our energy corridor that we can help create the types of conditions that will provide a a win-win for Western Canadian energy and for Quebec's own hydroelectricity.
Radio-Canada, Mr. Scheer, how can people take your plans seriously when you don't give any details as to how you intend to meet those targets in 2030, when you defend pipelines and when you say you're not going to attend the march on Friday? Well, the fact is that our plan has a lot of details in it and a lot of figures as to how we're going to meet those targets. There's a major contrast with the failed plan of Mr. Trudeau. Well, our plan is costed. It will bring in measures that show how we can reduce emissions. With Justin Trudeau's plan, we're going backwards. That's not my opinion, it's other people's opinion. Now, he's talked about meeting new targets in 2050, but he can't even meet the 2030 targets. Now, for example, with this measure that we're announcing today, we can reduce emissions by 9 megatons. So that is a concrete plan, and under our plan to fight global emissions, we can have more of an impact on the environment. There are people in your own camp that say that you're not enough of a fighter, that you're not well known enough, that you don't have a good message in Quebec. My question is, are you hurting your own campaign, and what are you going to do to correct the situation? Well, we have a great campaign going, and I'm very, very pleased with it and with the results. When I was elected leader of the Conservative Party, there was no one who thought we could win ridings like Richard Martel's riding, and we did. We have a plan for Quebec that will resonate and that is resonating with Quebecers, and all of our candidates are very optimistic about the results they'll achieve on October 21st, and we're going to keep going. We're not giving up.
We're very happy with how the campaign is going all over Canada, especially here in Quebec. When I was first elected leader of the party, nobody expected us to be able to win by-elections like we did with Richard Martel. Our candidates are very happy with the way the campaign is unrolling. We're very optimistic for the results of October 21st.
TVA, you're here today without really having something to offer directly to people in the region. What are you proposing to those voters? There are a lot of issues here. People are saying that it's not normal for there not to be high-speed internet in the region yet. So what exactly do you have to sell to them? What specific things are you offering? Well, that's a very good question, and of course people in this region will take advantage of today's announcement. But also, it is our party that's talking about ensuring that the regional areas can have cell coverage and better access to high-speed internet. We are also the only party talking about supporting our forestry sector. So, yes, there are parts of our platform that specifically resonate with voters in this region, and we will have more to say about that in the coming days.
CBC News. With this announcement today, you're going to spend about $1.8 billion and only reduce emissions by about 9 megatons. Are there not better ways? Can you not get a better bang for your buck with other initiatives? It seems very expensive.
Well, there's two components to this announcement. Obviously, reducing emissions by reducing energy consumption is a key part of that. But the other key part of that is helping make life more affordable for Canadians. And when Canadians can take advantage of this homes tax credit to make renovations in their home, they will make their own lives will become more affordable as the cost of living is reduced because their energy consumption will go down. So there's two pieces to this announcement, and both of them are going to have a very positive impact for Canadians.
Leaving aside the carbon tax, which we know you hate, are there any other Liberal environmental initiatives that you'd roll back?
Well, we know that in addition to the carbon tax, the Liberals are proposing a fuel standard, which would increase the cost per litre of gasoline by a tremendous amount, altogether increasing the cost of a litre of gasoline by over 30 cents a litre. That is going to have a devastating impact on our economy and on the cost of living for Canadians. Moms and dads who drive to school, drive to work are going to pay drastically higher prices, and that's going to drastically reduce their quality of life. We are opposed to those types of measures that increase the cost of living for Canadians. Oui, il y a le standard
Yes,
pour
there
l'essence
is the
libéraux
gas
qui va
standard
augmenter
proposed by the Liberals that will increase the cost of gas with by at least 30 cents a liter, and that will make life much more expensive for Canadians, so we are also opposed to that. Yes, we're in Jonquière, and there's also the single tax return that you have talked about, and you've also talked about keeping 1,200 jobs that are at risk. How can you ensure that that will happen? Because that's a solemn commitment I'm making. The priority is to simplify life for Quebecers. This is the only province where people have to file 2 tax returns. So we're going to ensure that jobs are protected. We're going to tackle tax havens, and we're going to use the expertise of public servants to do that. And we'll ensure that if we sign an agreement with Quebec, it will be to protect jobs. Well, the fact is that people are talking about tax evasion and the fact that their jobs will disappear. Well, I think we have to have expertise on side. We need public servants to deal with the money coming from Quebec. So we will always need public servants in the Jonquière region to deal with the information and ensure that the system works. So that is a commitment I'm making, and I'm confident that we can do both things, make life simpler for people in Quebec, but also protect jobs here in Jonquière.
Good morning, Mr. Scheer. Joyce Napier, CTV. CTV News reported yesterday that a BC man was given medically assisted death despite pleas from his family that he was mentally ill, therefore could not make that decision himself, and he wasn't facing immediate death. Do you think there should be an investigation or clear guidelines for this bill?
Well, that's an excellent question, and that issue was raised multiple times when Parliament was studying this legislation. One of the main concerns I had with this piece of legislation was ensuring there were adequate safeguards to protect those who may not have the ability to give consent or to request these types of services. There is a timeline within the legislation to have a review of that, and with recent court rulings, I think it is time to take a look at the regime around medical assisted death and to ensure that it is protecting vulnerable people and while at the same time respecting the court's decision.
I want to ask you about Bill 21. So if you were Prime Minister of Canada, would you join the court case against the Secularism bill?
So as I've said many times, our position on this is very clear. This is not something we would ever pursue at a federal level. This was a decision taken by elected officials in Quebec. We have no intention of intervening in the court case. The court case is proceeding. The Quebecers will pursue that through the courts, and the courts will ultimately decide.
Morning, Mr. Scheer. John Iveson, National Post. Polls suggest that young people are less likely to vote for your party, in part because of your opposition to the carbon tax. Do you think you've inadvertently created a ceiling to your support in this country?
Not at all. I think young people are seeing more and more evidence that the carbon tax isn't working. And if they want real action on the environment, they're turning away from the Liberal Party because they see that after 4 years in power, Justin Trudeau's plan has made it so that Canada falls further and further behind. And that's why we're getting such great support for our real environmental plan.
Is it fair to say, as one economist did, that your plan is one where no one pays anything to fight climate change? Who's going to pay for this?
Well, our campaign is about making life more affordable for Canadians. I note that under Justin Trudeau's plan, large industrial emitters aren't paying the carbon tax. They negotiated themselves, thanks to having key insiders with the government, they negotiated themselves an exemption of up to 90% of the carbon tax. And yet, hardworking moms and dads are paying the full cost of the carbon tax. And that's why our plan puts an emphasis on technology over taxes. We can incentivize the types of research and development that leads to reductions in emissions with things like our green patent tax credit. There's an example in Saskatchewan of a company that took advantage of a very similar type of measure that reduced the emissions for refining oil. They were able to maintain the same level of production while drastically lowering their emissions. That is the type of technological examples that will help to lead to emissions, as well as taking the climate change fight global. So I'm very happy with our plan. I think Canadians see a real plan. Our plan takes the climate change fight global and puts more money in their pocket.
Yes, I'm very confident that Canadians appreciate our real plan, and they see with the Liberals that the major polluters got a special agreement that will exempt their emissions by almost 90%. But ordinary taxpayers will have to pay 100% of the carbon tax. So with our plan to fight emissions in a global context and with the measures that will put more money back in their pockets, Canadians will see a real plan.
Mr. Scheer, Evan Dyer, CBC. You say Canada is not the problem when it comes to climate change, and you mentioned China. But the average Canadian emits twice as much CO2 as the average citizen of China. The average Canadian emits 3 times per capita the global average. So why are Canadians not the problem?
When you look at the total emissions coming out of Canada and you compare that against countries like China, you see where the major disparity is. We're in a region right now that is known for producing aluminum at a fraction of the emissions for the same unit of production in China. So by exporting our clean technology, by doing things like facilitating the installation of carbon capture technology in power plants in China, we can drastically lower global emissions. And isn't that the point? Isn't the point of this to have a real impact on climate change by reducing global emissions? Just by installing carbon capture on a fraction of those Chinese power plants, we can reduce hundreds and hundreds of megatons worth of CO2 emissions. So that is why our plan works better. A molecule of CO2 does not need a passport to travel around the world. So by taking the climate change fight global, we can have a much better impact on lowering global emissions,
And when we talk about reducing hundreds and hundreds of megatons, just to come back to Canada's own target, in your understanding, in megatons, what is Canada's Paris target?
Well, look, it's a percentage reduction of levels that we are going to achieve by 2030. And for example, this specific measure today will reduce, an independent analyst said that this would reduce Canada's emissions by 9 megatons. When you look at things like the green patent tax credit, we can expect the types of innovation and investment that will lead to the types of products that will help reduce those emissions.
Yes, but what is the number that we have to hit by 2030 in megatons?
As I said, this plan gives us the best chance to hit those Paris targets. We have to reduce our production, our emissions of our emissions by 2030. Justin Trudeau now wants to talk about 2050 because he knows he's failed to get to 2030, and we're not going to get into a debate about 2050 when he doesn't even have a plan to hit the 2030 targets.
We're not going to enter into a debate about 2050 when Justin Trudeau doesn't even have a plan to meet the targets in 2030. Our plan sets out specific measures, and today's announcement will reduce our emissions by 9 megatons. That's an example. The other measures will also have a significant impact on our emissions.
So you said just now a bunch of times that Canada's best chance to hit Paris is your plan, but you've not actually attached or produced an analysis to show how your climate policies will reduce emissions or by how much. So how can you suggest your plan will get Canada to Paris without any analysis?
Well, actually, this announcement I've made today does come with an analysis, and it's that it will reduce emissions on a permanent basis by 9 megatons. That's significant. This will help put more money back in the pockets of hardworking Canadians while at the same time lowering emissions. The other types of things that we're talking about in our plan, such as the green patent tax credit, will lead to massive amounts of investments in Canada, creating jobs and opportunity, and develop the types of products that lower emissions here at home, and that can be exported. And that's also very key as well, because really, if we don't have a global context in fighting climate change, we can shut down our economy here tomorrow morning. We could shut everything down. And within a matter of weeks, all of those emissions would be replaced in China. So our plan is a more realistic plan, and it'll have a better impact on the planet, on our environment, by reducing global emissions.
En français.
Oui, au contraire, notre annonce d'aujourd'hui vient
today's announcement
un chiffre
comes
très exact,
with
de
exact
nos émissions par 9
figures.
mégatonnes.
We're
Et
going
aussi,
to
les
reduce
autres mesures dans
emissions
notre
by
plan
9 megatons, and the other measures in our plan will allow us to lower emissions in a global context. We will have innovations and investments here in Canada, and we can share our new technology with other countries to reduce global emissions.
The speculation about the impeachment of Trump is casting a long shadow that there's any hope that Congress is going to vote on USMCA anytime soon. So in your opinion, is Canada better off with or without new NAFTA?
What Canadians want is certainty that we will have access to the U.S. market and to the North American market with Mexico. Certainty is very important. That being said, there is no one who has suggested that the new NAFTA that Justin Trudeau came back with was better off than the old NAFTA. Justin Trudeau gave up so much to Donald Trump, gave away concession after concession after concession. In several areas, we have a weakened trade deal than we left with it. The key for Canada, for Canada and for our economy, is certainty, and we'll leave it to American lawmakers to decide what happens in the U.S. But as long as we can maintain that preferential access to the North American market, I think Canadians can have confidence that our economy will continue to grow. So we'll see what happens in the U.S., but we're certainly always, the Conservative government will always fight to have free trade within North America.
En français.
Oui. C'est clair qu'avec le nouveau NAFTA, que Justin Trudeau a donné les concessions après concessions à Donald Trump, il n'y a aucun aspect, l'ancien NAFTA est clairement meilleur que le nouveau NAFTA. Et Justin Trudeau a dit qu'il va retourner avec un meilleur accord avec les États-Unis, mais je vais laisser aux États-Unis et les élus des États-Unis de décider maintenant. Mais pour notre part, le Parti conservateur va toujours appuyer le libre-échange avec les États-Unis et le Mexique. Merci beaucoup. Thanks very much.